But I thought first we could just check in about like this crazy live launch we're doing today. How are we feeling?
Well, it's interesting. You know what I realized is that I think I told Christina this earlier, actually. Christina, sorry for sharing the contents of our one-on-one, but I think I mentioned to her that I'm starting to get a little cocky about Substack, just in the sense that like we do actually have extremely good engineers, extremely good designers and product people. We land features pretty well. We test things well. We plan things well. The sort of coordination across all those functions was really impressive to me. Like it just, as I mentioned to her, it was from my point of view, it was effortless. Of course, there was a lot of effort from them. But what I mean is that like the whole company didn't have to fixate on threading the needle and lining up the time. Just a bunch of really competent people worked well with the creators and just kind of made it happen. But the thing is, I sort of expected that. So like, I was not super nervous today. I was mostly just like, I hope this is cool for people. I hope it works well. I hope nobody, has any disasters or whatever. So I'm happy with how it's gone. And it's gone sort of like how I hoped it would go, or thought it would go.
Yeah, it's been kind of magical just watching. I've been having a fun experience all day where like some other person that I'm subscribed to pops up in my, as live, and I pop in and I'm checking in like, oh, they're hanging out at the library. Oh, they're doing a reading. It's been a cool day of just getting to like put a face to people that I've been reading. I think the tenor of the response so far has been very encouraging. Like I kind of expect every time we add something that really changes what's possible on the platform, there'll be some people that are kind of like, oh no, what does this mean? Does this mean you've changed everything? Does this mean you don't love me anymore? Like what's happening? And the ratio of like how much people felt that to how much I expected they might feel that was like much more positive today than it has been. There's been features where I didn't expect it to be unsettling for people, and they've like been quite unsettled. And this one, I think it's a good thing, but I could empathize with somebody who's like, wait a minute, live video, like what are you guys doing? And instead, I think a lot of people that I've seen so far are just kind of like seeing it for what it is and pretty excited.
Yeah, I think you and I talk about this all the time. We've always been paranoid about launches, both of us, I think. We've always been anxious. Maybe we're just anxious people. But I also think that like Substack is a company that is, I don't know, how sometimes people will refer to different eras of feminism as waves, or different eras of coffee as waves. Four Barrels, a fourth wave coffee shop,
Are you saying we're a fourth wave social media company?
Well, I just mean that we are in a separate wave from Facebook. And a lot of the things that all of us came to expect from that era of company, it's like, I think users and employees both have a period of just being like, yo, it's going to happen the same way. I was at Facebook when they pivoted to video, and they did pivot to video, and they did crush text posting. In fact, I don't think this is a bad thing to say. I was on a team for a long time that Zuck had created to address Snapchat specifically. He thought Snapchat was a really serious competitive threat. And the way that Facebook interpreted what Snapchat was doing was it was lowering how much people were just posting their own personal life. And on Facebook, they were doing that on Snap now. And so Facebook started this process of trying to figure out, well, how do we get people to do that on Facebook like they used to, just their sandwich, just whatever. And one of the things that a data scientist I worked with found out through an awesomely designed experiment was that this was all actually downstream of deprioritizing text posts. When you kill text posts, you kill all those little crazy weird updates that your friends write, all the just random stuff, detritus, normal stuff. And when you boost video, you boost photos, you wind up favoring like the highest production stuff, which is often made by companies, media companies. And so newsfeed turns into a newspaper. And but what was interesting is nobody at Facebook could accept that knowledge or that conclusion. Basically, this was the point where Facebook decided to become what it became because they were making more money with video and images. And so this is one of these things, like if you lived through that as either a creator or a user, like this often goes one direction and it's like not a good direction. And so I think it's taken all of us years to kind of go, okay, if it is a different model, it actually does seem to mean different things. Like even I, from inside the company, I'm always like a little surprised at how well things go. And I think it is because the model is the important thing.
Hell yeah. Some guy worries that I take shit he says seriously. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think Chris is pretty good at. I don't think this is presumptuous. I don't know some guy well, but I feel like some guy and I are in approximately the same epistemological category. You know what I mean? Where like it's a lot of good stuff, but you can't expect everybody to take it all seriously. Go
have your baby already, some guy.
Yeah, really. What's going on with your fucking? there is a hard limit. Like they have.
You are? Don't tell me that you're at the hospital right now watching the Substack live, dude.
If you are,
There's no
please
way.
don't tell your wife, and please don't have this on speaker. Hey, it's Joe and that other guy from Patreon, if she can hear us.
Oh man, can you imagine? We gotta go. Hold on. Chris and
on.
Mills are talking.
Oh, I was worse than that. Live stream the birth. That's right.
Oh man. Okay, I've got some questions. First, can I admire? There's new things in my UI since like yesterday. I can turn my sound on and off. I can flip my camera.
Yeah.
This thing is very fancy that we're making.
They're good, man. It's crazy.
All right, what are some good questions for Mills here? What's something you wish more people knew? Asked Scoot.
Oh God, Scoot, that's a really heavy question. I think that's, one of the reasons why I've never felt like I had general advice to give is I bet that's pretty specific. I bet it's like hard to think of what more people should know. I bet it's almost impossible to think of like maybe I have this thought a lot. It's a great question because I often have the thought like, what do I wish more people knew? Or like I think I feel like a lot of nerds and always have felt that there's some differential between what I know and what's common knowledge in a way that is bad for other people or for some transcendental end. I don't know. So I have that feeling, that thing I posted the other day is a good example. Like I had just never heard anybody say that like parents could try to pre-release their kids from guilt by just saying that. And like, that's something that I wish more people knew. Maybe more generally that it's like, it's actually possible to say things to people that help them in some way is a true thing. But no, I could think about that forever and not come up with a good answer. I'll try to write something better than that.
I think that's great. And the guilt thing was, if as a parent, you explicitly tell your kids, don't feel guilty when I pass.
Yes. I'm sorry. So my father said, he observed this a few times, that when your parents die, it's almost a universal experience in his claim that you feel guilty and you can imagine the kinds of guilt and regret you feel. It's like, I should have spent more time with them. I could have talked to them more. I wish I knew them more, all of these kinds of things. And he said, it's universal, so you're not going to not feel it. But what I would like you to try to remember is I don't want you to feel that. And part of what animates that guilt is a feeling that someone was wronged and that your parents were ill-served by you in some way, or that, it was to their harm, right? And so when that thought pops up, as it does, you also have a little model of your actual parent having been like, yo, this is bullshit. You don't need to think about this at all. This is not real. It's just a thing that happens, but I don't think you should feel it. It's like an unbelievably effective intervention. And like I mentioned, I still have those thoughts, but I just now also remember like Roger and Ellen being like, that's not real. None of that's real, which is very helpful. I will say something. This is a crazy thing, but since we're doing live streams, I want to make them crazy. I saw somebody in the comments just wrote, Jesus is the thing you should tell everybody. I will say this, the most controversial thing I'll say is I wish everybody knew that a lot of ancient traditions of knowledge and wisdom, including religions, have a tremendous amount of direct pertinence to their life today. And that a lot of what eats at them is that in various ways they've foreclosed themselves of entertaining the possibility that any of those things could be real or have a salience for them. And that decision to foreclose that possibility, if you really want to be serious and interrogated, is not an especially epistemologically sound position. In other words, there are not as good reasons to not take ancient shit seriously as people think. That's what I would say. Maybe that's my one thing, Scoop.
Eat shit, internet atheists is how I'm.
Well, no, I want to say wisdom traditions because I don't want to. It's not. I don't think of it that way. It's like I think that applies to everybody, including many religious believers of many types. That there's a lot of things they're not really right. It's like humans have been at it a long time, and a lot of them have been really, really good at it. Thinking that it's
Noor asks, you've worked at a ton of big tech companies, and I'm wondering how different community engagement and interaction is on Substack than the rest. What does it feel like to be so accessible to the community?
It feels great to me. I can answer that part really easy. It feels awesome to me. Every other company I've been at has been substantially more deliberate. So there's been sort of, there's been like a real kind of over-workshopped, thing. We were talking to some marketing people about this a few weeks ago, they made the argument that like in the modern world, especially with LLMs, that's blown. The world of producing a good, polished marketing message or brand identity or whatever, that's over for anybody except maybe like Apple or, you know, other, like there's certain conditions where it can be met. It's probably over for Apple in a lot of ways, but basically that for us, what we should just do is kind of like be ourselves and let the chips fall where they may. And they didn't just mean us, like employees of the company. They also meant our creators. They were like, you guys should just be like, look at the fucking awesome shit happening on our platform. And by awesome shit, you mean all of it, like anything. Does, you know, your attitude is like, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's broad. It's the internet, man. And like, you're into it, you know, which is true. That's kind of how we feel. And I think that was a good insight on their part.
Yeah, there's sort of this just like wild, rambunctious, sort of not in control, but there's just sort of like this, I don't know, flurry of activity. And a lot of people are different. A lot of people we're not trying to like ride herd over it too closely. Two things that brought up for me. I don't know, did I ever tell you the story of my old co-founder who I think was inspired, was the CEO of the company I started before Substack, I helped start before Substack. I think was inspired by kind of like the Apples of the world and this, you know, take your brand seriously. And one time somebody made some swag, somebody made a bunch of t-shirts with the company logo on it. And he felt like it was bad. And there was this huge box of t-shirts. And he brought them out to the parking lot and poured gasoline on them and lit them on fire as a message of, you know, we have to take the brand so seriously that if there's this box of bad t-shirts, you know, and this is like sort of like a deliberately theatrical act, right? It's not just like,
it's not just, it's like, this is how important it is. Yeah, right.
It's like, I mean, it's going to stick in your mind. I still remember that.
Yeah.
I was badly sleep deprived. I don't remember everything that happened, but I remember that little vignette. And I think that was coming from like a well-intentioned place of like, hey, we have to sort of treat this thing with reverence. If we want other people to take it seriously, we have to take it really seriously. That means sort of like, you know, keeping it consistent, like being really tight with the messaging. I had that feeling. I was like, I think I told you we were visiting the Apple campus the other day, and that whole thing exudes like, oh man, somebody who works there described it as like working in an iPhone, where it's sort of just this like, I think of it as like the way that the food court on like a fascist space station would feel, where it's sort of just like weirdly, I don't know, everything's like put together in to such a degree that even if it's beautiful, it becomes inhuman.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There's an interesting thing that both, I say both like there are only two, but the two of the well-known political extremes produce architectural styles that are like very deliberately reductive of complexity and inhumane. Because, you know, I do think there's a sort of a universal aspiration. And in Apple's case, it's relatable because it often pays off for them to deliver something pure and good and polished. And that has to contend with the fact that like, you really don't want to constrain humans that much because they're so fucking crazy. And like, you just never know which things they'll do will lead to which good things and all of that. And I don't have any kind of set position on it. You know, I know that my big brand moment at Substack was when I think somebody, I think she's not here anymore, but one of our original employees who was a great person made mugs that said Substack on them.
Oh, and they were so fucked up. And I was like, should I be taking these out and burning them?
Yeah,
no,
we talked about
it. This is a real.
It was just they took the word mark and the logo and just stretched it fully to the mug. So it was like the proportions were insane. It was basically illegible. It looked like garbage. And I remember, you know, Joro and you talking about it. We were kind of like, what do we think about this? And I think we were all kind of like, I don't really think anything about this. You know, like
graphic design is my passion.
Yeah, right. It's like, if anything, I think it's funny and like, you know, that's as good a rubric for making a call on this as any. I wish I still had that mug.
All right, let me hit you with an idea on this, which is actually those different aesthetic approaches just work in different situations, and especially they work at different scale. So like an iPhone is a great way to design an iPhone, not a great way to design a building that tens of thousands of people spend a lot of time in. And maybe it's a great way to design a single player tool or product, but it's not a way that you even could design a thriving internet multiplayer thing like Substack is, where, you know, the emergent behavior of all the people being there is the thing itself. It's sort of like, it's alive in a real way. You can't sort of just like design it as if it were an iPhone. It's going to be, there's just no way for it to be successful without being messy.
I think that I definitely deeply believe this, as I think you and I probably talked about this very early on after meeting, but I think the example I often think of, and this is, if any designers are on this stream, I don't know, but this is maybe one of the harshest things that I'll say publicly about an error I see a lot in design. Very frequently a designer, this doesn't happen that much anymore. I think everybody knows this now, so maybe this is just old shit, but for a long time, a huge percentage of design resumes I would review would feature redesigned social networks, where the redesign was essentially to impose, that more control had been imposed to raise the quality in some sense of what was on the network, right? And, I often,
I'm laughing because Nick is in the chat.
Oh, yeah. Nick, you're the man. Nick, you're literally my favorite designer on earth, man. Come on. Fucking Nick, Nick, I'm sure had this phase. I had this phase. I remember being, early into web and internet design and stuff, and basically just always wanting to do more aesthetic, more controlled things to create a higher order experience, analogizing the experience of what was happening to existing art forms, sorry. Oh, Kellen. Oh, come on, Kellen. You know what I mean? He's like a fucking, he's like a design junkie type. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's not crazy. Now I'm going to think about this all night though, Kellen. Oh my God. Wait, what the hell was I just talking? Oh, right. That, and I get that. But like you're saying, what I would think when I would see these resumes is this person has not worked on networks and they don't understand what scale is. And there's so many analogies from history. You could think about like what a garden is at Versailles versus like a thriving ecosystem, right? And also think about like which of those two things really does. I'm sure the garden at Versailles is beautiful, but like if you want thriving dynamic outcomes, do you want the garden at Versailles and all of the maintenance and control and a position that requires, or do you want something crazy that's going to also feature tons of fucking mayhem? Probably the latter. And then I used to analogize this also to the city of Brasilia. Brasilia is a design city, and it was, I think at the time, a bit of a flop. I'm told that now it's popping, so I don't know.
Urban city, city design is a pretty interesting. I'm a big Jane Jacobs stan, as you know, and I think a lot of those lessons apply to spaces we live in online, and one degree of metaphorical remove. Mm-hmm. Do you have any questions you want to ask me, or that anybody put in your thing?
Let me check my. We got most of the people who replied to me were kind of joking around. I felt like. Let's see here.
Getting back to quantum physics. Oh God.
Oh yeah, Chris, I'd love. Actually, you know what? You and I have not talked about this, and yet I know that you know about it because you and I have read a book that touches on this. So I will ask you. Could you just briefly explain what many worlds is, the many worlds interpretation, and then what do you think about it?
Okay, so I'm horribly unqualified to explain this. I will give my garbled take of what I took from the beginning of infinity, which is, okay, so there's results in quantum physics that nobody argues that are certainly empirically true, and there are different ways that you can interpret what they mean. And there's kind of like a standard interpretation, quote unquote, that is almost agnostic, that kind of treats things as inherently probabilistic, where it's kind of like, hey, if it turns out this electron is spinning one way or the other way, the way that we must actually think about that is it's in a superposition of these states, and then it kind of like randomly breaks one way or the other, and that's just, that's happening all the time, and it's sort of inherently stochastic in that sense. And Deutsch and others take the multiple worlds interpretation that says actually a better explanation of those same observations and that same math is that in some real sense, all of the worlds actually exist. And every time, untold quadrillion times a second that some electron spins up or down, it's not that those things actually resolve one way or another, but there's kind of like the fabric of reality is such that there is a uncountable infinity of parallel universes, kind of, where each of those things kind of exist, and they're completely inaccessible to each other. We essentially like have the perception of living in one, but really what's happening is there's sort of like, you know, infinite Mills and Chris's that exist in these kind of probability clouds, and then anytime some quantum resolution happens, it kind of like propagates out at the speed of light, and there's this structure to reality. And even though that thing is unfalsifiable empirically, in the sense that as far as we know from this story, we couldn't run an experiment that proves one or the other, nonetheless, that many worlds interpretation is a better explanation for what we have, because the other one is actually not a satisfactory interpretation. It sort of like makes mathematical sense, but it's not actually an explanation, says Deutsch.
Yeah, he really goes after instrumentalism hard. That's right. So I think that's a great explanation. So if anybody's curious, I think it's the photon slit experiment is the big one. At least in Fabric of Reality, his earlier book, that's the one I remember him making big hay of. It's like these photons, they fucking interact, man. Like they do, you know, it's like it's happening. The question I got was thoughts on many worlds interpretation, imagination, and human consciousness, how those things intersect, overlap, and relate. I don't know if you've heard this, Chris. This is a science fiction idea. I think Deutsch might actually go out of his way to like machine gun this idea just to be like separate. Because just for those who don't know, Deutsch is at least in our view, I think this is a shared view for you and me, Chris. He's a very serious person. He is a very serious and capable scientist. And when he says that many worlds, the literal fact of reality is that we have an infinite number of universes that interact only through photons, he means that just very literally, and he thinks that's the best explanation. I'm quite impressed by that fact. I obviously am incapable of evaluating any of these things directly myself. But so he hates this idea, separates himself from it, but I'll mention it because it was in the question. There's a science fiction idea called quantum immortality. And that idea is the idea that your consciousness always resides in a universe where it lives. And so the fact of your life, for example, if you've had, I fell off of a building once, and I didn't die, what do you know? And often in these stories or with this theme, the idea is actually in many universes you did die. And but you'll always be in a universe where they solve death right before it gets you, and you just keep going somehow forever. That's one idea that I think illustrative of what this question is getting at, which is like, do you have any thoughts on whether anything going on with mind or consciousness or creativity could be involved with the many worlds structure of reality, if it's true? A crazy question. Good question.
I mean, I do think it has interesting. It's interesting trying to work out sort of the moral implications of multi-worlds if it's true, because there is, I mean, in my probably blinkered understanding of this thing, is there's a sense in which that story is consistent with the Deutschian picture, right? Like there is, to the extent that there's sort of like a, this sort of like stacked layer of realities, kind of. It's like, well, for any possible outcome or any sort of like, those worlds do exist, right? Like if you're playing Russian roulette or something, there's probably like, maybe not exactly that, but if you were playing Russian roulette with an electron spin, you would end up, there would be parts of the world where you continue to exist, or where some version of you continues to exist. And like, how should you reason about that? And at any given, and you put this in with consciousness, it's like, okay, so at any given moment, given that I'm here, that must be because I am one of the branches that survived to this point, and yada yada yada. But that doesn't mean anything going forward. Basically,
right.
It's like, I think if you run sort of the math of the like, hey, there's a 50% chance that I die if I go in the Schrodinger's box, versus in 50% of future world states I am dead versus I'm alive. I think those have to end up being morally equivalent, or you'll start to get really crazy. You'll start to have really crazy implications of like how to live and what to do. Anyway, this is all above my pay grade, dude.
Well, me too. But it probably wouldn't be fun to talk about if we were at the pay grade. We'd be like, this sucks. We don't know anything. Yeah. But as it is, you could just say whatever. this is like we're living Gelman amnesia right now. We're the guys who are like, I don't know that much about this, but I'll tell you how it goes.
I'm sort of hopeful that if we say something egregiously wrong, somebody on the internet will correct us. That's how the law is supposed to work.
I hope so. It's funny though. I did want to mention this. You mentioned the moral dimension. One of the things that occurred to me once was I have an intuition that there's something immoral about taking risks. And I don't know exactly what that intuition is. It could just be false. It could be neuroticism. It could be whatever. But like, for example, like when my mom would say, hey, be careful tonight. I feel like there would be something immoral about not being careful. And one thing that this multiverse theory sort of is like every time you take a risk, even if you made it, because you took that risk in many universes, you didn't, more universes than would have been the case. But then, thinking this way is not only paralyzing, but also I don't understand how to think about free will in this context. So let's move on.
What other ones are good? Does anybody in the live chat have questions that we should answer?
Jill asked about falling off a building. Hey, Henry. Hey, Catherine. Oh, wow. Hey, everybody. Yeah, Dane, that's a problem, though, man. You don't want to find that out, man. They probably yank you from the sim if that happens. Great.
In this Sunday's matchup between Derek Carr and Jalen Hurts, who will get more yards throwing or rushing?
Wait, rushing? Well, Derek Carr is not going to get any yards rushing. I don't think, unless something goes.
Yeah.
So, Chris, man, that was like you're at the sports bar with me every night. That was flawless. Yeah, no, I think Jalen Hurts will get more rushing for sure, and Carr will probably get more passing. I don't know how to think about the way the Saints are performing this year. It seems it's incompatible with my model of reality. So I'm just along for the ride. I can't make any predictions.
You're living in a very thin part of the quantum football universe.
I think I am, man. I think I am with Substack too. I really do.
This is okay. We won't go back to the quantum physics, but one thing that I think is true is very few branches of science have inspired as much insane woo around them. Where there was a whole moment there. Remember, there was that movie. There was some famous cult movie that was like, I forget what exactly it was, but it sort of like took the idea of quantum physics. It was like, so we change the world as we observe it, man, and like it had the most egregious
This is like one of these things. This is an experience. Okay, here's Scoot. This isn't something I want everyone to know, but an experience I would wish for anybody like myself. I'm a liberal arts person. I'm a mentally ill liberal arts musician by like youth background training. Okay, so I'm like.
But you're just repeating yourself there. Sorry.
Right. Literally, dude. But it's like I couldn't be more this type of person. And when I got exposed to the hard science.
What the bleep do we know? That's right.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Oh my! I remember that, and I remember being so.
It was
upset.
Real bad. Everyone's like, "It's so good," and I was like, "It's
upset,
making me so angry."
So one of the things that happens when you're in the liberal arts world is you're in the world that does this to science. And I got very lucky that when I was in high school, I was interested in this shit, and I was very woo about it. And I read a book by a Tulane professor, and I emailed him because I was early on the internet, and I was like, "Hey, blah 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 blah," and the rigor of his ideas immediately revealed to me how empty a lot of what I was saying was. Like we weren't arguing, and he wasn't like saying mean things to me. It's just that when I would read our exchange, one of us was just saying things. You know what I mean? And the other was like the ideas were structured and interconnected and interdependent in a way that made their reality inviolable. And I was like, boy, there's a big gap there between how Mr. Science Man reasons and how fucking Poetry Boy over here reasons. And then Deutsch was a big accelerator of that. As you know, I'm not like some STEM fanatic. I think I'm extremely woo. I am as woo as you can be. I believe in but I no longer have any misapprehension about like the reality of the quality of the thinking in that world and its difference from the thinking in a lot of the zones that I inhabit. And like in other words, I don't look down on it. I'm like, and I think it was a really good experience for me to kind of get serious about what you can say. You can't say tons of the stuff that people say. It's not even real. It's crazy.
Sometimes you go on little rants in these conversations that I take out of context and use as generic reaction clips. And I think you just made another one. I'm excited for that.
Oh. No, I can't. Why we have this dilemma? I don't know why. I'm sure there's a reason, but I don't know why.
Read out if you're reading things from the chat, read them out for the people on the VOD.
Okay, somebody just mentioned Quantum Leap with Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell, and not only do I remember it, when I was in 6th grade, my friends and I spent all of our time trying to use markers to make our calculators look like Ziggy. And we were all really excited to have a Ziggy. And literally a couple of years ago, I was like, wait, I'm grown up now. If there are Ziggies, I could buy one. Like, I'm sure somebody's made a replica Ziggy. So I went online and I found some replica Ziggies, and I didn't buy one. I don't, it's like the spark of your joy dies at some point, and you don't care. And I just thought, I'm not gonna walk around talking to Ziggy like Dean Stockwell. And also, like, I'm never gonna be like Dean Stockwell, so.
It's sort of like you took the path of not being a Disney adult, but for whatever obscure thing this thing is. All right. What other good questions should we do?
Your call, dealer's choice. I'm on your thing.
Oh yeah. I guess we've gone over the time we promised to do, so we can end this anytime.
All right, wait, did I get that wrong? Is it Dean Stockton? Did I get that? I might be mixing people up.
You had the most unhinged idea for our future live streams today, and I fucking love it. And I'm going to tease it here so that people know that this is what's going to happen.
Okay.
You said to me today, you're like, because we were in our one-on-one, like our business meeting where we talk about serious work things.
Yeah.
And you said, should we just stream these? Should we just do our one-on-ones live on Substack?
I literally think we have 10 minutes of a given hour. So, we do an hour-long one-on-one, or maybe 50 minutes it is. But I feel like for only 10 minutes of that, are we talking about things that are sensitive? If that, I think in a lot of weeks we don't actually. Yeah. We're just like working through market stuff, talking about the product.
I was gonna say we can't do the segment where we talk about who your favorite designer is, but it turns out you just say that shit anyway. I can
fucking do that live. Yeah, right. Kellen DM'd me a devil masked face and said, "I'm just joking," but I will be thinking about that forever. They all know I love all of them.
So, for those of you, we're about to end the stream. This has been very fun, but tune in next time for. I think this could be a whole brand. We could call this like the one-on-one.
The one-on-one, yeah.
And just do one-on-one stuff.
There's probably some kind of a tax deduction play there too. We could get nice mics or something,
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if I could plug a better microphone into this thing. But AI should just fix it. I should just have his crappy microphone, and AI should just make me sound like James Earl Jones.
Sorry, I don't know if Mike's watching. Mike, if so, good luck.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming out, and come back for our one-on-one next week.
Bye, all.